The bustling office hummed with activity as Sarah pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway. Phones rang, keyboards clacked, and the smell of fresh coffee wafted through the air. Just another Monday morning at Apex Industries. Sarah kept her head down, focusing on the task at hand as she maneuvered around hurried employees in crisp suits. Watch it. A man in an expensive-looking tie nearly collided with her cart as he rushed past, not even glancing her way. Sarah bit back a sigh. After 5 years of cleaning these offices, she was used to being invisible. As she entered the main conference room to tidy up after the morning meeting, Sarah overheard snippets of conversation from a group of executives still lingering by the door. Did you see what she was wearing? A woman's voice dripped with disdain. You'd think she could at least make an effort to look presentable. Sarah's cheeks burned as she realized they were talking about her. She'd worn her nicest blouse today, even though it was a bit faded. The cleaning uniform hardly left room for fashion statements. A man's voice chimed in with a chuckle. Well, what do you expect? It's not like she has anywhere important to be. Bet she's grateful just to have a job scrubbing our floors. Laughter rippled through the group as they moved down the hall, leaving Sarah alone in the suddenly too quiet room. She gripped the handle of her mop, willing the sting of tears away. It wasn't the first time she'd overheard cruel comments, but it never got easier. If only they knew. Sarah allowed herself a small, secret smile as she began wiping down the massive oak table. Let them laugh. Let them look down their noses at the cleaning lady. They had no idea who she really was or what she was capable of. 5 years ago, Sarah had walked into this very building with a dream and determination burning in her heart. Fresh out of business school with an MBA, she'd had big plans to climb the corporate ladder and make her mark in the cutthroat world of finance. But doors kept slamming in her face. Too young, too inexperienced, too different from what they were looking for. After months of rejections, Sarah realized she needed a new approach. If they wouldn't give her a seat at the table, she'd find another way in, even if it meant starting from the very bottom. So she'd swallowed her pride, put on a cleaning uniform, and got to work. While she scrubbed floors and emptied trash cans, Sarah's mind was always working. She observed, she listened, she learned. In the shadows and margins of this gleaming office, she began to see the company from angles no one else could. Sarah noticed inefficiencies the bigwigs missed from their corner offices. She overheard complaints from frustrated employees and dissatisfied clients that never made it up the chain of command. And slowly, a plan began to take shape. It had taken every penny of her savings and then some. Sleepless nights poring over spreadsheets, endless meetings with skeptical investors. But 2 years ago, Sarah had finally done it. She bought out the failing cleaning company that held the contract for Apex Industries. Now, as she quietly went about her work each day, Sarah was actually gathering intel and making moves that would change everything. The clueless executives had no idea that the woman they mocked was slowly but surely positioning herself to take control of their entire company. Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction as she pictured their shocked faces when they finally learned the truth. But she quickly refocused on the task at hand. There was still work to be done, pieces to move into place. As she wheeled her cart out of the conference room, Sarah's eyes landed on a framed photo on the wall. It showed the Apex Industries board of directors, a sea of older white men in expensive suits. Sarah's jaw tightened with determination. Soon, that picture would look very different. She was so lost in thought that she almost ran into someone rounding the corner. "Oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry," Sarah stammered, looking up to see a kind-faced older woman she didn't recognize. The woman smiled warmly. "No worries at all, dear. Say, you wouldn't happen to know where I could find Sarah Johnson, would you? I have a meeting scheduled, but I seem to have gotten turned around in this maze of an office." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. This must be Margaret Chen, the venture capitalist she'd been corresponding with for months. The potential investor who could be the final piece of her master plan. For a moment, Sarah was tempted to drop the act right then and there. To stand up straight, look Margaret in the eye, and say, "You found her. I'm Sarah Johnson." But years of practice kept her in character. Sarah gave an apologetic shake of her head. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't know all the employees' names, but if you go down to reception, I'm sure they can help you find who you're looking for." Margaret thanked her and continued on her way. Sarah watched her go, heart pounding with excitement and nerves. This was it, the meeting that could change everything. As she pushed her cart down the hall, Sarah allowed herself to imagine how the next few hours might unfold. Margaret finding the real Sarah Johnson, not the cleaning lady, but the sharp, ambitious businesswoman she truly was. The two of them talking strategy, analyzing market trends, planning Apex's future. And all the while, just outside the door, oblivious employees would hurry past. Maybe some would sneer at the cleaning lady, never suspecting that their fate was being decided just a few feet away. Sarah straightened her shoulders, a renewed sense of purpose filling her. Let them laugh. Let them look down on her. Their time was almost up. Soon, everyone would know exactly who Sarah Johnson really was. And nothing would ever be the same. Sarah's mind raced as she continued her cleaning rounds, her thoughts a whirlwind of anticipation and strategy. She couldn't help but reflect on the long, challenging journey that had brought her to this pivotal moment. Growing up in a small town, Sarah had always dreamed big. Her parents, hardworking but struggling to make ends meet, had instilled in her a fierce work ethic and an unwavering belief that she could achieve anything she set her mind to. Those lessons had carried her through countless late nights studying, working part-time jobs to save for college, and finally earning that coveted spot in a top business school. But nothing could have prepared her for the harsh realities of the corporate world. Fresh out of school, brimming with innovative ideas and eager to prove herself, Sarah had been met with closed doors and condescending smiles. Time and again, she watched less qualified candidates land the position she coveted, their paths smoothed by connections and an unspoken understanding of how things worked. The final straw had come during an interview at Apex Industries. Sarah had spent weeks preparing, crafting a brilliant proposal for streamlining their operations. But the moment she walked into the room, she saw the dismissive glances, the barely concealed smirks. They hadn't even bothered to look at her resume before deciding she didn't belong. That night, nursing her wounded pride and a growing sense of anger, Sarah had an epiphany. The system was rigged, but maybe she could use that to her advantage. If they wouldn't see her potential when she came through the front door, she'd find another way in. It hadn't been easy, swallowing her pride to apply for a job as a cleaner. Her parents were bewildered, her friends thought she'd lost her mind. But Sarah saw it as her Trojan horse, a chance to observe the inner workings of Apex from a unique vantage point. Those first few months had been grueling. The work was physically demanding, the hours long, and the treatment from employees often demeaning. But Sarah persevered, knowing that every snide comment and dismissive glance was fuel for her ultimate goal. She began to notice patterns, inefficiencies that were invisible to those at the top. The way certain departments hoarded resources while others struggled. The innovative ideas from lower-level employees that never made it past middle management. The corners cut in the name of short-term profits that were costing the company in the long run. Slowly, methodically, Sarah began to build her case. She spent her evenings poring over financial reports, industry trends, and market analysis. She created detailed plans for restructuring, identifying potential areas for growth that Apex's myopic leadership had overlooked. Finding investors had been another uphill battle. Sarah lost count of how many times she'd been laughed out of meetings, potential backers unable to see past her current position as a cleaner. But she refused to give up, refining her pitch, leveraging every connection she could make. And then, finally, a breakthrough. A chance encounter at a local coffee shop had led to a meeting with a retired businessman who saw the potential in Sarah's vision. His initial investment had been modest, but it was enough to set the wheels in motion. Now, years later, Sarah stood on the precipice of seeing her dreams realized. The cleaning company had been just the first step. Through careful maneuvering and strategic acquisitions, she had slowly been buying up shares of Apex Industries. Today's meeting with Margaret Chen could provide the final push needed to gain a controlling interest. As Sarah emptied trash bins and wiped down surfaces, her mind churned with possible scenarios. How would the board react when they realized the extent of her plan? Would they fight back, try to discredit her? Or would they recognize the value she could bring and be willing to work together for the good of the company? She was so lost in thought that she almost missed the conversation drifting from a nearby office. The door was slightly ajar, and she recognized the voices of two senior executives. "Telling you, something's not right," one was saying, his tone hushed but urgent. "These new stakeholders popping up, the pressure from the board. Someone's making a play, and we need to figure out who before it's too late." Sarah's heart raced. They were starting to catch on, faster than she'd anticipated. She needed to act quickly, but one wrong move could unravel everything she'd worked for. Just then, her phone buzzed quietly in her pocket. A text from her contact in it. Server room clear. Windows open. This was it. The chance she'd been waiting for. With access to Apex's main servers, Sarah could gather the final pieces of evidence she needed to solidify her position. But it was risky. If she was caught, there would be no explaining away her presence in a restricted area. Sarah glanced at her watch. The meeting with Margaret Chen was in less than an hour. If she hurried, she might just have time to get what she needed and make it to the conference room without arousing suspicion. Taking a deep breath, Sarah made her decision. She quietly maneuvered her cleaning cart towards the elevator, her heart pounding with each step. As she waited for the doors to open, she caught sight of her reflection in the polished metal. The same invisible cleaning lady she'd been for years, but with a fire in her eyes that couldn't be extinguished. The elevator dinged and Sarah stepped inside, pressing the button for the basement level where the server room was located. As the doors closed, she allowed herself a small, determined smile. One way or another, everything was about to change. Little did Sarah know, another player was about to enter the game. In a sleek office across town, a sharply dressed woman hung up the phone, a calculating look in her eyes. She swiveled in her chair to face a wall covered in news clippings and financial reports, all centered around Apex Industries. Well, she murmured, tapping a manicured mail against her desk. Looks like someone else has their eye on the prize. Time to see what this Sarah Johnson is really made of. As Sarah descended to the server room, blissfully unaware of this new threat, the pieces were falling into place for a showdown that would shake Apex Industries to its very foundation. The cleaning lady with a secret was about to step into the spotlight. Would she be ready for the challenges that awaited her there? The server room hummed with the steady whir of machines as Sarah slipped inside, her heart pounding in her chest. She moved swiftly, knowing every second counted. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing files that would cement her position and expose the board's mismanagement. Just as she finished downloading the crucial data onto a flash drive, a noise outside the door made her freeze. "Hello? Is someone in there?" A deep voice called out, followed by the jingle of keys. Sarah's mind raced. There was nowhere to hide in the small, open room. As the door began to open, she made a split-second decision. Grabbing a rag from her pocket, she bent over a server, pretending to dust. The security guard stepped in, surprise evident on his face. "What are you doing down here?" Sarah straightened, forcing a sheepish smile. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I got turned around looking for the supply closet. This building is like a maze sometimes." The guard's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but then softened. "It sure can be. Come on, I'll show you where you need to go." As Sarah followed him out, she silently thanked her years of staying unnoticed. Her invisibility had just saved her from disaster. Meanwhile, across town, the mysterious woman who had taken an interest in Sarah's activities was making moves of her own. Victoria Reeves, CEO of a rival company, had caught wind of the subtle power shifts at Apex. She sensed an opportunity and was determined to seize it. "Find out everything you can about this Sarah Johnson," Victoria instructed her assistant. "I want to know what she's planning and how we can use it to our advantage." Back at Apex, Sarah hurried to freshen up before her meeting with Margaret Chen. As she straightened her blouse in the restroom mirror, the door swung open. In walked Melissa, one of the executives she'd overheard mocking her earlier. Sarah tensed, but Melissa barely glanced her way as she touched up her makeup. "Oh, while you're here," Melissa said, her tone dismissive. "There's a spill in the break room that needs cleaning up." Sarah bit back a retort. "I'll take care of it as soon as I can," she replied evenly, her secret knowledge giving her the strength to remain calm. As Melissa left, Sarah allowed herself a small, knowing smile. Soon, roles would be reversed, but first, she had a crucial meeting to attend. In the conference room, Margaret Chen was already waiting when Sarah arrived. The older woman's eyebrows rose slightly at Sarah's attire, but to her credit, she didn't comment. "Ms. Johnson, I presume?" Margaret extended her hand. "I must say, you're not quite what I expected." Sarah shook her hand firmly. "I find that's often an advantage, Ms. Chen. Shall we begin?" As they dove into discussion, Sarah's passion and expertise shone through. She laid out her vision for Apex's future, backing it up with the hard data she'd gathered over years of careful observation. Margaret listened intently, her initial skepticism giving way to genuine interest. "I have to admit, Ms. Johnson, your proposal is intriguing," Margaret said as their meeting drew to a close. "But I have to ask, why go to all this trouble? Why not simply apply for a leadership position within the company?" Sarah's eyes flashed with determination. "Because, Ms. Chen, sometimes the only way to change a broken system is from the outside. Apex has potential, but its current leadership is too entrenched in old ways of thinking. They needed a wake-up call." As Margaret gathered her things to leave, she paused at the door. "You're taking a big risk, you know? The board won't give up control without a fight." Sarah nodded, her voice steady. "I'm counting on it." Little did Sarah know, the board was already mobilizing. In the CEO's office, urgent phone calls were being made. "I don't care how you do it," Richard Blackwell, Apex's CEO, growled into the phone. "Find out who's behind these share purchases and shut them down. No one makes a move on my company." As the day wore on, tensions rose throughout Apex. Whispers of a potential takeover spread like wildfire. Employees huddled in corners, speculating on what it might mean for their jobs. Middle managers scrambled to align themselves with whoever they thought might come out on top. Through it all, Sarah continued her cleaning rounds, observing the chaos she had set in motion. It was a strange feeling, being at the eye of the storm while everyone around her was oblivious to her role in it. As she emptied the trash in Richard Blackwell's office, she overheard him barking orders to his assistant. "Cancel my dinner plans. I want the entire board here for an emergency meeting tonight. Someone's coming for us, and we need to be ready." Sarah's pulse quickened. Things were moving faster than she'd anticipated. She needed to accelerate her plan. Just then, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I know what you're doing. Meet me at the coffee shop across the street in 10 minutes if you want to stay ahead of the game." Sarah stared at the message, a mix of fear and curiosity washing over her. Who could have discovered her secret? Was it a trap or a potential ally? As she stood frozen, weighing her options, the office around her continued to buzz with nervous energy. The future of Apex Industries hung in the balance, and Sarah Johnson, the overlooked cleaning lady with an MBA and a master plan, held the key to it all. With one last glance at the oblivious executives rushing past, Sarah made her decision. It was time to step out of the shadows and into the fight she'd been preparing for all these years. Whatever awaited her at that coffee shop, she was ready to face it head-on. Sarah's heart raced as she pushed open the door to the coffee shop, her eyes scanning the room for potential threats. In the corner, a woman in a crisp suit raised her hand, beckoning Sarah over. As she approached, recognition dawned. It was Victoria Reeves, CEO of Apex's biggest competitor. "Sit down, Ms. Johnson," Victoria said, her voice low. "We have much to discuss." For the next 20 minutes, Sarah listened in growing disbelief as Victoria laid out what she knew and what she wanted. The rival CEO had pieced together Sarah's plan and saw an opportunity for a partnership that could reshape the entire industry. "Together, we could take control of Apex and revolutionize the market," Victoria finished, her eyes gleaming. "What do you say?" Sarah's mind whirled. This could be the boost she needed to secure her takeover, but at what cost? Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from her contact in it. "Board meeting starting. Blackwell looking for dirt on you." "I need time to think," Sarah told Victoria, standing abruptly. "I'll be in touch." As she hurried back to Apex, Sarah's thoughts raced. She had to act fast, but one wrong move could unravel everything. The flash drive in her pocket felt heavy, laden with the secrets that could turn the tables. Meanwhile, in the Apex boardroom, tensions were reaching a boiling point. Richard Blackwell paced at the head of the table, his face flushed with anger. "Someone is trying to steal this company from under us," he fumed. "And I want to know who." Board members shifted uncomfortably, eyeing each other with suspicion. Who among them might be the traitor? Just then, the door burst open. Melissa, the executive who had dismissed Sarah earlier, rushed in, waving a folder. "Sir, you need to see this. We found something on that cleaning woman, Sarah Johnson. She's not who she seems." A hush fell over the room as Blackwell snatched the folder. His eyes widened as he read, then narrowed dangerously. Find her. Now. Outside, Sarah had just re-entered the building when she saw security guards approaching, their faces grim. Her pulse quickened. Had she been discovered? Thinking fast, she ducked into a supply closet, her mind racing. She needed a way to get to the boardroom, to confront them on her own terms. But how? As raised voices echoed down the hall, Sarah's eyes landed on an air vent. It was a crazy idea, but it might be her only chance. With trembling hands, she pried open the grate and hoisted herself up. Crawling through the dusty vents, Sarah could hear snippets of conversation from the rooms below. Employees whispered about rumors of a hostile takeover. Middle managers argued over shifting alliances, and ahead, growing louder, the angry voices of the board meeting. Just as Sarah positioned herself over the boardroom vent, her phone buzzed again. Another text from Victoria. Time's up. What's your answer? Sarah's finger hovered over the reply button. Everything she worked for hinged on the next few moments. Accept Victoria's offer and secure her victory, but potentially compromise her vision for Apex, or go it alone and risk losing it all. Below, Blackwell's voice boomed. When I find this Sarah Johnson, she'll regret the day she ever set foot in this company. If only he knew she was right above him, about to change everything. Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself for what came next. It was time to reveal herself, to step out of the shadows and into the spotlight. But as she reached to remove the vent cover, a sudden commotion erupted in the boardroom. Sir, a breathless voice called out. You need to see this. Our stock, it's plummeting. Gasps and shouts filled the air as board members scrambled to check their phones. In the chaos, no one noticed the slight movement of the ceiling vent. Sarah's own phone lit up with a flurry of notifications. Somehow, word of the power struggle had leaked to the press. Investors were panicking, and Apex's stock was in freefall. This was it, the moment that would determine everything. Sarah knew she had to act now, before the company she worked so hard to save slipped through her fingers. With shaking hands, she began to push open the vent cover. Below, the board members argued loudly, oblivious to the woman about to drop into their midst and change the course of Apex Industries forever. Sarah took one last deep breath. Years of planning, of being overlooked and underestimated, had led to this moment. As she prepared to reveal herself, she couldn't help but wonder, would they finally see her for who she truly was? And more importantly, was she ready for what came next? The vent cover creaked softly as Sarah pushed it aside. It was now or never. With her heart pounding and the flash drive clutched tightly in her hand, she prepared to drop into the chaos below and face her destiny. Just as Sarah was about to make her dramatic entrance, the boardroom door flew open with a bang. All eyes, including Sarah's, turned to see Margaret Chen stride in, flanked by two stern-looking individuals in suits. Gentlemen, Margaret announced, her voice cutting through the chaos, I believe we need to talk. Sarah froze, half in and half out of the vent. This wasn't part of the plan. What was Margaret doing here? Richard Blackwell's face turned an even deeper shade of red. What is the meaning of this? This is a private meeting. Margaret smiled coolly. Not anymore, Mr. Blackwell. As of 10 minutes ago, I represent the majority shareholder of Apex Industries, and we have some concerns about the current leadership. The room erupted into shocked murmurs. Sarah's mind raced. How had Margaret acquired so many shares without her knowledge? Had she been outplayed at her own game? As the board members argued loudly, Sarah made a split-second decision. She couldn't reveal herself now, not until she understood what was happening. Silently, she slid back into the vent, her heart pounding. Meanwhile, Victoria Reeves was watching the Apex stock plummet with growing frustration. Sarah's silence spoke volumes. It was time for Plan B. With a few taps on her phone, Victoria set in motion a series of events that would send shockwaves through the industry. Back in the boardroom, Margaret was laying out her case. We've been monitoring Apex's performance for months, she said, sliding folders across the table. The mismanagement, the missed opportunities, the toxic culture, it ends now. Blackwell sputtered. You can't just come in here and... Actually, we can, one of Margaret's companions interrupted. And that's not all. He turned to address the room. We have reason to believe there's been insider trading and financial misconduct at the highest levels of this company. The accusation hung in the air like a thunderclap. Board members exchanged nervous glances. Who among them was guilty, and who would be caught in the crossfire? Sarah, listening intently from above, felt a mix of vindication and fear. This was everything she worked to expose, but now it was spiraling out of her control. Just then, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was her contact in it, his voice urgent. "Sarah, you need to get to the server room now. Someone's trying to wipe the system remotely. If they succeed, all the evidence will be gone." Sarah's blood ran cold. She had to act fast, but how could she get out of the vents and down to the server room without being seen? As she deliberated, a new commotion arose in the boardroom. Someone had pulled up a breaking news story on their tablet. Apex Industries embroiled in scandal, the headline blared. Anonymous whistleblower reveals years of corporate malpractice. Sarah's jaw dropped. She hadn't leaked anything to the press. So who had? In that moment, it hit her. Victoria Reeves. This was her power play, using the chaos at Apex to position her own company for a takeover. The realization galvanized Sarah into action. She had to get to those servers and secure the real evidence before it was too late. Apex's future, and her own, depended on it. As she crawled through the vents, Sarah could hear raised voices and accusations flying in the rooms below. The company she'd worked so hard to infiltrate and change was tearing itself apart. Finally reaching an exit point, Sarah lowered herself into an empty hallway. She straightened her cleaning uniform and tried to look nonchalant as she speed-walked toward the elevator. Just as the doors were about to close, a hand shot out to stop them. Sarah's heart nearly stopped as Melissa, the executive who had dismissed her earlier, stepped in. Melissa's eyes narrowed as she took in Sarah's disheveled appearance. "You," she said slowly, "there's something not right about you." Sarah's mind raced. Should she maintain her cover or come clean? Before she could decide, the elevator lurched to a stop between floors. The lights flickered ominously. "What's happening?" Melissa demanded, a note of panic in her voice. Sarah knew. Someone, Victoria, Margaret, or maybe even Blackwell himself, was making their final move, and she was trapped in an elevator with a woman who was starting to put the pieces together. As alarms began to blare throughout the building, Sarah realized she was out of time and options. The truth was about to come out, one way or another. She turned to Melissa, took a deep breath, and said, "You're right. There is something you need to know about me." The elevator hung suspended between floors, two women facing off inside it, while above and below them, the fate of Apex Industries hung in the balance. Whatever Sarah said next would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. The cleaning lady's masquerade was about to end, but would she emerge victorious, or watch her carefully laid plans crumble to dust? Sarah locked eyes with Melissa, her heart pounding. "I'm not just a cleaning lady," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I'm the one who's been buying up shares of Apex. I'm here to save this company from itself." Melissa's eyes widened in disbelief, but before she could respond, the elevator jerked back to life. The doors opened to reveal chaos in the hallway. Employees rushed about in a panic, alarms blaring overhead. "Prove it," Melissa challenged, her shock giving way to curiosity. Sarah nodded, determination setting in. "Follow me." They raced towards the server room, Sarah explaining her journey as they ran. To her surprise, Melissa listened intently, asking sharp questions that revealed her own frustrations with Apex's leadership. As they reached the server room, they found the door ajar. Inside, a figure hunched over a computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Stop," Sarah shouted. The person spun around, revealing a face Sarah knew all too well. It was Mark, her contact, the same one who had warned her about the server attack. "Sarah." Mark looked bewildered. "What are you doing here?" "I'm trying to protect the evidence." Suddenly, everything clicked into place. "You're the whistleblower," Sarah realized aloud. "You leaked the information to the press." Mark nodded, shame and defiance warring on his face. "I couldn't stand by any longer, but now someone's trying to wipe it all away." Sarah moved to the computer, her years of secret study paying off as she quickly assessed the situation. "It's not being wiped," she said, her voice filled with awe. "It's being broadcasted. Live. on screens throughout the building, and as they would soon learn, on news channels across the country, Apex's dirty laundry was being aired for all to see. Financial records, emails, and video recordings painted a damning picture of corporate greed and mismanagement. Melissa watched in shock as her own complicity was laid bare. "We have to stop this," she whispered. But Sarah stood firm. "No," she said. "This is what Apex needs, a clean slate." Just then, Victoria Reeves burst into the room, flanked by security guards. "Step away from the computer," she demanded. "This ends now." Sarah faced her, chin held high. "You're right. It does end now, but not the way you planned." With a few keystrokes, Sarah added her own files to the broadcast, evidence of Victoria's attempted hostile takeover, along with Sarah's comprehensive plan for restructuring Apex. Victoria lunged forward, but Melissa surprised everyone by stepping between them. "Enough," she said firmly. "It's time we start doing things differently around here." As if on cue, Margaret Chen appeared in the doorway, a satisfied smile on her face. "Well done, Sarah," she said. "You've exceeded my expectations." The pieces fell into place. Margaret hadn't outplayed Sarah. They'd been working toward the same goal all along. Margaret's investment had been the final push Sarah needed. In the hours that followed, as the dust settled and the world reacted to Apex's public unraveling, a new order began to take shape. Richard Blackwell and his cronies were ousted, facing criminal charges for their misdeeds. Victoria Reeves' takeover attempt was thwarted, her own unethical practices exposed. And Sarah? The cleaning lady with an MBA found herself at the center of it all, appointed as the new CEO of Apex Industries. Her years of invisible work and careful planning had paid off in ways she'd never imagined. As she stood before the company, preparing to address the shell-shocked employees, Sarah felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find the security guard who had caught her in the server room days earlier. "I knew there was something special about you," he said with a wink. "Didn't think you'd end up running the place, though." Sarah laughed, the tension of the past days finally breaking. "Sometimes," she said, "the most important person in the room is the one you least expect." She stepped up to the podium, surveying the crowd. Faces that had once looked through her now watched with rapt attention. "Today," she began, "we start a new chapter at Apex. One of transparency, innovation, and respect for every employee, no matter their position." As applause filled the room, Sarah allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The cleaning lady had done more than just tidy up Apex Industries. She had wiped the slate clean, paving the way for a brighter, more equitable future. But even as she basked in her hard-won victory, a new challenge caught her eye. In the back of the room, a young intern watched with a familiar glint of ambition. Sarah made a mental note to keep an eye on her. After all, she knew better than anyone that true change could come from the most unexpected places. The story of Apex's transformation would be told for years to come. But for Sarah, standing at the helm of the company she had worked so hard to change, this wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. In the weeks that followed Sarah's unexpected rise to CEO, Apex Industries underwent a transformation that sent ripples through the entire business world. The story of the cleaning lady turned corporate savior became the talk of every news channel and business school, inspiring countless discussions about workplace equality and the untapped potential within organizations. Sarah's first order of business was to implement a company-wide restructuring that flattened the hierarchy and gave voice to employees at all levels. She instituted an open-door policy and created channels for ideas to flow freely from the ground up. The very people who had once sneered at her as she emptied their trash cans now found themselves sharing boardroom tables with her, their expertise finally recognized and valued. Melissa, who had stood by Sarah in that pivotal moment, became an invaluable ally. Her insider knowledge of Apex's operations, combined with her newfound commitment to ethical business practices, made her the perfect choice for Chief Operating Officer. Together, Sarah and Melissa worked tirelessly to rebuild Apex's reputation and internal culture. Mark, the IT whistleblower, was not forgotten either. Instead of facing retaliation, he was praised for his bravery and appointed to lead a new department focused on corporate transparency and ethical tech practices. His story became a cornerstone of Apex's new employee training program, emphasizing the importance of integrity at all levels of the company. As for Victoria Reeves, her attempted hostile takeover backfired spectacularly. With her own unethical practices exposed, she found herself facing legal troubles and a mass exodus of clients from her company. The business world watched in fascination as the tables turned, with Apex emerging stronger while Victoria's empire crumbled. Margaret Chen, whose behind-the-scenes support had been crucial to Sarah's success, took a seat on Apex's board of directors. Her experience and wisdom proved invaluable as the company navigated its new direction. She often reminded Sarah, "Remember, true leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge." One of Sarah's most popular initiatives was the Walk in Their Shoes program. Every executive, including Sarah herself, spent 1 week each quarter working in different entry-level positions throughout the company. The program not only helped leadership stay connected to the day-to-day realities of their employees, but also uncovered numerous opportunities for improvement and innovation. 6 months into her tenure as CEO, Sarah stood before a packed auditorium of Apex employees. The atmosphere was electric, a far cry from the tension and fear that had permeated the building on that fateful day of the takeover. "When I first walked through these doors 5 years ago," Sarah began, her voice strong and clear, "I was invisible to most of you. Today, I stand here not as someone above you, but as someone among you. Every single person in this room, from our newest intern to our most experienced manager, has the potential to shape the future of Apex." A ripple of applause went through the crowd. Sarah smiled, remembering the young intern she'd noticed at her first address. That intern, Jessica, was now heading up a promising project in the R&D department, her talent nurtured rather than overlooked. "Our success these past months isn't just about profits or stock prices," Sarah continued. "It's about creating a workplace where everyone feels valued, where innovation can come from anywhere, and where we lift each other up instead of climbing over each other." As she spoke, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on her journey. The long nights studying after her cleaning shifts, the countless rejections she'd faced, the moments of doubt when it seemed her plan would never succeed. It had all led to this moment, but she knew the real work was only beginning. "We've made great strides," she said, "but we have so much further to go. Apex isn't just changing itself, we're changing the way business is done. Every decision we make, every product we create, every policy we implement, it all has the power to impact lives far beyond these walls." The audience hung on her every word, a sea of engaged faces where once there had been indifference or disdain. Sarah felt a surge of pride, not for herself, but for what they were all building together. As the applause died down and the employees filed out, energized and inspired, Sarah found herself approached by a familiar face. It was the security guard who had caught her in the server room all those months ago. "Ms. Johnson," he said with a warm smile, "I just wanted to say, thank you. My daughter, she's in college now, studying business. Your story, it's given her hope. She believes she can make it, no matter where she starts." Sarah felt a lump in her throat. This, she realized, was the true measure of her success. Not the accolades or the financial turnaround, but the lives she was touching, the doors she was opening for others. Later that evening, as Sarah prepared to leave her office, the same office where Richard Blackwell had once plotted to maintain his iron grip on the company, she paused to look out over the city. The lights of other office buildings twinkled in the distance, and she wondered how many other Sarahs were out there, quietly working, watching, and waiting for their moment. Her phone buzzed with a message from Melissa. "Turn on the news. You're going to want to see this." Sarah flicked on the television mounted on her wall, curious. The headline made her jaw drop. "Inspired by Apex, wave of companies adopt clean slate policies." The reporter detailed how businesses across the country were implementing transparency initiatives, flattening hierarchies, and actively seeking input from employees at all levels. Apex's transformation had sparked a movement, challenging long-held assumptions about corporate structure and success. As Sarah listened, she felt a mix of pride and humility. What had started as her personal mission had grown into something far bigger than herself. She thought of all the cleaning ladies, security guards, mail clerks, and other overlooked employees who might now have a real shot at making their voices heard. The story concluded with a quote from a renowned business expert. "What Apex Industries has done under Sarah Johnson's leadership isn't just a feel-good story. It's a blueprint for the future of business. In an age where talent can come from anywhere, Companies that fail to recognize and nurture that talent at every level will simply be left behind. Sarah turned off the TV, a quiet determination settling over her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove that Apex's success wasn't a fluke. But for now, she allowed herself a moment to appreciate how far they'd come. As she gathered her things to head home, Sarah's eye caught the framed photo on her desk. It wasn't the typical CEO portrait. Instead, it showed her on her first day at Apex, mop in hand, determination in her eyes. She kept it there as a reminder of where she came from, of how far she'd come, and of all those still waiting for their chance to rise. Sarah switched off the office light and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, she smiled to herself. Once, this had been the site of her moment of truth, trapped with Melissa as the company fell into chaos around them. Now, it was just another part of the building where any employee might have their next big idea. The elevator descended, but Sarah's spirit soared. The cleaning lady had done more than clean up a company. She had started a revolution, and this was only the beginning.